Welcome to the Society Pod, a podcast for entrepreneurs, marketers, and leaders. Here's your host, Jessica Yarmy.
Hey everybody, and welcome to episode 6 of the Society Pod. My guest today has a background in retail, in marketing, in manufacturing, in fitness, and in entrepreneurship. And we're going to go into all of those topics. She is a girl boss in the fitness space, which obviously we love. She's currently CEO and president of JK Products and Services, which is a manufacturer of light technologies and wellness equipment. So this is going to be an interesting one today. Welcome to the show, Brynn Scarborough.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. So happy to support this awesome new podcast.
I just gave a brief introduction of you and your bio, but why don't you fill in some of the blanks?
I've had a long development path here at JK. I'm actually celebrating my 12th anniversary with them next month. Came in as the development director 12 years ago. And as you mentioned, worked my way through marketing, became executive director of sales, and then became managing director, and then finally CEO. Most importantly, I think, especially to this conversation, is that I've really gotten to lead the charge in our really strong pivot into a more holistic approach to wellness, longevity, recovery. You know, we have a history in sunlight, and really taking that and incorporating that in a much more holistic way of balanced lifestyle, well-being, and the equipment that helps us support that from a lifestyle integration. So as a company today, we look very, very different than we did 5-6 years ago, and we are completely changed from who we were a decade ago. So just really working with a lot of the interesting new trends and consumer demands that are happening now in the space.
Before we dive into the fitness space, I'm just curious about this career jump between to start in business development and then jump to marketing and then manufacturing. And then, all of a sudden you're like climbing up the ladder and president, CEO. Across your 12 years there, you've had 4 different or 5 different roles. Talk to me about how you did that and how you kind of climbed the ladder within your current organization.
Yeah. So, my leadership story is what I like to call unlikely. I am an unlikely leader. I love to invest in unlikely leaders. I love to watch them, grow into their potential. And honestly, it also comes with a good bit of naivete. I didn't know what I couldn't do. So I tried, and I took a lot of responsibility for things that I didn't know I wasn't supposed to know how to do. Did fine with it. I have been a human my whole life who has been willing to walk into a room with white walls and put color on the walls and kind of be able to build the structure and see the vision. And my background, honestly, I was homeschooled from the time I was 2nd grade, and then got a scholarship to college at 16, got a GED. Some of that sheltering served me a little bit, because while I have zero traditional pedigree, I just didn't know what I wasn't supposed to be able to do. I definitely wasn't supposed to ever be able to run a company, wasn't born and bred for that. There's no doubt. As it came to opportunities would present themselves, whether that's through company transition or growth or pivoting or acquisition. And I not just put my hand in the air and say, hey, I'll do this. I had the ability to see it coming, put a plan together, present the plan, and say, let's run. And as a leader, when you hear that from somebody in your group, you're really willing to say, let's go. And especially if it's a plan you didn't have to put together yourself. That has served me through multiple different areas of development at this point.
That's just a fascinating journey, because I think a lot of the headlines these days almost are advising people to jump at a certain point, like 2 years, jump, 3 years, jump, and make your career progress through the jumps. But you really pushed your career forward within your own organization, and it sounds like you really did so proactively and strategically. So
I'm number one strengths finder strategic. So that plays out in all areas of my life. If you saw the checklist that I put together to get through my daily personal life, you'd see that there's no area free from that. But I have seen, we've all seen the career trends change. Average executive lifespan at a single company at this point is 4.2, 4.3 years, and it keeps going down. I've essentially done the same thing, but within the company. Every 2 to 3 years, making sure that I knew various different segments of the business, making sure that I know how the marketing team runs. I know how the sales team runs, have been able to lead through, mass transition, things like that, know our processes down to the core. I've been able to like lead through acquisition and all of those areas. And so, no, while I haven't moved around to various different companies, I have still gotten multiple industry experience, multiple division level experience. So I think it really depends, honestly. And at the same time, I've also gotten to grow a leadership team from scratch that I would never have been able to get to do, and kind of multiply the impact over time that would have never been available had I been moving every 2 to 3 years. It all depends on how you measure impact.
It seems like you maybe along the way kind of lived by that mantra of like lead without the title, or, act as if you are the next level that you want to be. Because whenever you jump internally, you kind of need people to follow along and trust
Right.
that jump. So, and now you're their boss. So was that something you did intentionally, or did you really just kind of fall into that leadership team that you're building?
I don't think anyone's ever fallen into a leadership team, fallen into a synergy or a group of people that work together to lead a company that do that with good culture and, and good connections. And that is sheer force of will and commitment and discipline to bring that together. There is no luck involved in that situation. Now, I am a huge proponent of leading with your influence long before you have the title or the authority. And that is advice that I give probably on a every other week basis to up and comers in our organization. Be like, listen, nothing's going to change when you get a title. The only thing that's going to change is the name on your business card. It's not going to change your ability to positively influence, to affect culture change, to improve process orientation. That all comes from an internal locus of being able to win people over and to get people onto your side. 10, 12 years ago, as a younger leader, I was a very Napoleon-esque commander, right? It was command and conquer. It didn't really matter if you were on my side or not. I'm happy to say that Myers-Briggs now says I'm a protagonist. And so now I know how to take the people with me. Like, the most important thing to me is that I can lock arms with the people around me and we are leading forward as a unified front. That has been an evolution of experience and maturity and learning how not to be such an insecure, passive aggressive leader that I was at 25 years old.
Well, and it takes authenticity, and it
Yeah.
seems like if you've been in one company for 12 years and you've made four moves and they've all been increase in responsibility, and your team has followed you through those moves, that says to me that whatever evolution happened in your leadership style, you took your team through that evolution with you, and you showed up authentically through that transition. And now all of a sudden, as you're the biggest boss, they're still right there, like locked arms with you.
It really is true, but I will say, it came from a personal need to develop my ability to show up authentically. And I mean, we could have a whole podcast conversation about the psychological safety that's needed, especially for women, to be able to show up as their whole selves, like being able to drop the compartmentalization and show up as I am, right? The unlikely human that's not overly formal and isn't necessarily going to kiss the ring and has a rebel heart and all of these things that I probably would have shoved to the side or not really let shine bright in the past. But now then being able to create the platform and the space for other people to show up in their authenticity as well, I had to do the work first, as we know, right? You lead thyself before you can create that space for other people. But as I came into my own over the last 12, 13 years, then yeah, I could absolutely make space for other people to do the same thing. The team that like gets me out of bed every morning and gets me excited to go to work, that I'm so proud of. Now I get to watch kind of the barriers break away from their authenticity, and they get to show up in their full lightness, which is so exciting to see.
Yeah, so exciting and so rewarding.
Mhm.
We're gonna come back to some of those themes in a moment, but I want to kind of dive into the fitness side, because you and I were just a few weeks ago together at IHRSA. So as you were at that conference, it's a big fitness conference, and what were the things that stood out to you as themes that were
Yeah.
found throughout the conference?
IHRSA was exciting this year. There was a big buzz, it seemed like, leading up to it. There was a big buzz for us as a company, because this was the first year in the fitness space that we had debuted our full wellness portfolio. We teased a little bit of it last year and the interest was just huge. This year we were able to debut our entire portfolio line of dry water massage and red light and other types of modalities. What I'm seeing in the fitness space and what I keep hearing over and over again is just the convergence of multiple different industries there, whether that's fitness, wellness, longevity, recovery. No longer are we viewing these from a segmented lens. Everyone's looking to the fitness operators to wear multiple hats and to serve multiple purposes. I'm not sure that the industry has totally figured it out yet, right? They're having to fully reimagine what we mean when we say recovery. We're having to fully reimagine what we mean when we say longevity. No longer does it mean elder care. It means health span and lifespan and quality of life today in this moment for active gym goers. And so to me, there's a bit of a renaissance going on from that perspective. The other two things that stood out to me were the just integration of customizable and high level technology. There's a few companies out there that are either automating in a really smart way or beginning to pull AI into their development. And I know everybody, you're either super excited about AI or you're exhausted with the conversation. Either way, it's here and you got to figure out how to deal with it. The other thing I saw is that, whether it's weight loss drugs or GLP-1s, last year, everybody in the fitness industry was like, absolutely not. These are horrible, worst thing that's ever happened to the gym. And now a year later, as we see traffic getting pushed into the gyms from a lot of these protocols, and now we're even hearing that the updated protocol is going to include a prescriptive weight training regimen. Gyms have got to be ready for this. I think it's a huge improvement. I'm not here to comment about whether or not weight loss drugs are good or bad, but the effect of that in getting foot traffic back in the gyms, even for personal training, recovery, all that stuff is going to go up. So I would say those are kind of the three most interesting conversations happening. I'm interested to see how the industry starts adjusting to it. It's going to take some really changed thinking, in my opinion, about how we've imagined kind of HVLP and even boutique fitness in the past.
Yeah, and I think you have a front row seat to those conversations, and I see recovery taking off. I see longevity taking off, and I see it taking off in the studio space, and I also see it taking off in the big box space, and big boxes backing into recovery centers or recovery pods within their bigger box. And then I also see it happening in home. So you have a front row seat to like all three of those places and how recovery equipment is impacting those three places. So where do you see the biggest momentum happening? Where are you seeing the opportunities in those three environments?
Yeah, I think across all segments, whether it's home, boutique, or HVLP, the awareness of recovery as a lifestyle integration has changed completely since COVID. In the past, when we thought fitness, we thought HIIT intervals and no pain, no gain, and go hard and go home. And it's upregulation, 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 cortisol, breakdown to build up. Well, when we realized that kind of coming out of COVID, everybody's got enough cortisol. Everybody's got enough stress hormone. And now consumers are looking to fitness operators to downregulate, reduce this fight or flight hormone reaction, to help them regulate a central nervous system to come back into a state of relaxation and homeostasis. That's a conversation the fitness industry isn't ready to address. That's a whole point of conversation. It's kind of the yin and yang of fitness and recovery. We've been all on one side of the scale for the last 40 years. Now consumers are saying, listen, we want both. From a habit stacking perspective, big box and HVLP is perfectly positioned to meet that need, right? To just be able to go straight from one to the other. What they're trying to figure out is, what is the mix? What makes sense? What will get people through the doors? What is the equipment that will essentially run itself without operational complexity? The recipe is still being formulated. We've heard of dry January. This year we heard of flat January. And everyone's trying to address the issue of flat January. Like whatever we're offering isn't enough to get people through the doors of our location. It's going to take a real change of mindset, but it's happening across all segments. We're seeing more wellness going into homes, whether that's sauna or cold plunge, things like that. We're seeing more integrative things going into boutique, kind of the whole wellness space getting built out or recovery spaces or amenity spaces getting built out in HVLP. It's an evolution, and I think we're going to see a lot of trial and error over the next couple of years and see where it goes. But yeah, we really get to be at the forefront of that kind of autonomous wellness space, buildable circuit, habit stacking protocol that seems to be in front of what consumers are wanting.
I come from a big box background. I started in fitness at Gold's Gym, and I always thought of Gold's as like your one-stop shop for everything you need to live a healthy life. So you have your group exercise. In some locations, you had a pool, you had your Selectorize equipment, your free weights, and you had your protein and your smoothies at the front. And I think you're right that now that balance between offerings is different. And
Yeah.
if I were running a big box right now, what I would be looking at is how do I adjust my usage of space in my box to accommodate for that recovery or the de-stress that you're talking about, because I think
Sure.
consumers are looking for both, and to be that one-stop shop of here's everything that people need to live healthy. That looks different than it did even 10 years ago. In the wearable space, you started out with, we're just going to look at calorie burn, and we're going to look at,
Yeah.
calories per workout. And now it's starting to get into heart rate variability, and it's starting to get
Right.
into sleep quality and recovery time. You're adjusting or you're evolving on the technology side or the wearable side. And our facilities have been slow to adjust, which is an opportunity in this space. I think, whoever kind of figures out that pivot fast enough um, is going to really be positioned to be a leader in the recovery world.
I totally agree with you. I mean, and people are looking for efficiency at the end of the day. I just had this conversation earlier this week that there's no, if you have to make two different appointments, make two different stops, you're choosing between one, you're dropping one thing. But to make it stick, from a consumer perspective, it's got to be easily integrated into lifestyle. We don't want recovery to be something that you do on your birthday with a 3-month appointment time with a massage or something like that. We want it to be something that becomes part of your 3 to 4 day a week routine that can be easily integrated with an extra 10, 15, 20 minutes at a time. Kind of those micro shifts in lifestyle that are actually, moving the needle. 5 years ago, we didn't even know what HRV was. And now we're all tracking it every day to see where we're at with relative stress levels and that type of thing. And so I'm with you. I think the fitness industry, traditional fitness industry, has been slow to adjust to that. The resources are there now, I would say, in a way that they weren't even 3 or 4 years ago. If you went to IHRSA 3 or 4 years ago, there was 1 or 2 pieces of legitimate recovery equipment that wasn't a foam roller or a massage gun. And I've got nothing against those things. I own both. And every other gadget out there. People expect more than that at this point, especially if they're going to a brick and mortar location, because they have all that stuff at home now.
You mentioned massage, and I think that's a great comparison, because in a way, the massage industry has trailblazed this for us, kind of educating consumers on this is not just a luxury item that you should do once a year, but it's really like, let's get on a recurring membership. Let's do this once a month. Have you booked your next appointment yet? And kind of made it an important part of people's health routine.
That's right.
So as I'm thinking about my own health routine, I do all of the things. I love the sauna because I just like love the warmth of the sauna.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I do the cold plunge. I kind of hate the cold plunge because
Yep.
I don't like the cold, but I do it because I know
Yep.
it's important to do the things you don't want to do. I really haven't gotten into red light therapy, and
Yeah.
I know you're big into red light therapy. So what is the deal with red light therapy? Why should we do it? What is it good for? And how often do you do it?
I love red light. And of course, right, we make it. Of course, I love it. But we were one of the first people in the world to come out with a total body red light system. That was almost 15 years ago. No one even knew what to say about red light at that point. Nobody knew what it was. No idea, right? Totally off in space, out in fringe, whatever. Now everybody knows about red light and they want it. At the end of the day, what red light does is it's like an ignition switch for your mitochondria. It creates fuel for ATP to enhance cell turnover. That's as sciencey as I'll get because I'm not a doctor. I'm getting a doctorate in business, not in biological chemistry. But that's what it does at the end of the day. So the effects of that are numerous, right? More energy in the cell means higher cell turnover. It means faster recovery, better blood flow. It has lots of implications for the skin, to be able to improve skin elasticity and those types of things. And it really depends on how often you use it. Anyone who's known me for more than 5 minutes knows I'm kind of building out my little recovery suite at home right now that I'm so excited about. And our total body red light unit is going into it. And to me, that fits directly into my habit stack of sauna, cold plunge, red light. And, mixing those around. But ideally, you'd be in it 2 to 3 times a week, especially if you want to see the skincare benefits. The skin, unfortunately, responds a little bit more slowly than other areas of the body do biologically. If you're acutely sore after a workout, you've run a half marathon, you've lifted heavy, 1 20-minute session in quality red light. And when I say quality red light, I'm not talking about panels hung on a wall that you're kind of roasting around or some smaller application. I'm talking about like efficacy delivered to the body, vital organs essentially exposed, that type of thing. You should see a difference in acute soreness within a single session, meaning you go in kind of sore, uncomfortable, inflammation in the joints. When you wake up the next morning, you will feel 30 to 40% less soreness. And it varies by individual, right? It's like saying, what's a treadmill going to do for me? It varies by individual. But on the skincare level, obviously you want probably 60 to 90 days before you start seeing changes in skin. It's even great for hair growth, things like that, right? Anything that is improved by improved cell turnover and energy in the cell is what you'll see from red light. It has a lot of different usages and benefits.
So then what you're saying is having the light turned on the red setting in the sauna does not count for my red light therapy for the week.
Oh
Is
gosh,
that what?
I'm not sure I'm ready for the heat that I'm going to take over this. It does have a neurological effect. It has a positive neurological effect. As far as efficacy for building up ATP, you need to be close to that light. It's been proven in multiple medical studies. Further you are away from the light, the stronger the light's got to be to deliver effective light. So let's say it's in the ceiling. The one that's going in my house has red light in the ceiling, but that's going to be like a positive, energizing neurological effect. It's not going to have the same effect as actually delivering high quality dosages on the body level. Now, I don't have any haters yet. I'm not that popular, but I know that could get some hate. But it comes down to the quality of light and the quality of delivery of the energy to the skin itself. And that requires close proximity.
All right. You learn something every day here on the Society Pod.
Yeah, I know. And, there's a lot of art, but that's what the science is telling us over multiple years now. Red light's been studied a lot at this point. That wasn't true 15 years ago. And so we've really been able to bifurcate what it is that's kind of, it's not snake oil. Most of the equipment that you see is emitting the right light spectrum. The question is how the body is receiving it, anything that you're putting in between that light spectrum, like plastic or acrylic or space, that would cut down what the effective received dose is on the body.
Are you ready to level up your business? If you're under promoting your business, you're underachieving in your business. Start driving real demand today. Make it sizzle.
All right, we're going to switch gears entirely. We're going to go from red light to girl power in the business world, not just even in the fitness world. So you and I are LinkedIn mutuals, of course, and you posted recently the new Barbie Mattel spot it closed the dream gap. And some of the statistics that are in that spot, and I'll try to link it in the show notes, but one of the statistics is that girls by age of 5 stop believing they could be president. Girls are 1/3 less likely to receive a science-based gift, and parents are twice as likely to Google search, "Is my son gifted?" than "Is my daughter gifted?" And give me your thoughts on that spot, because you were the one who shared it, and I just thought it was so impactful. Like, how did it impact you?
It's funny when you bring up that post, like I get butterflies in my stomach because it has so much personal impact for me. The way I was raised in my background from a very young age, and I love my brother. He is a savant, smartest person I've ever met. But he was the one that was good at math. He was the one who was pegged to be the smart one. I was the one who was groomed to be married and a homemaker, and all of that stuff is great, but clearly not the path that I chose to follow. And so I really identified with this idea that, women dream within the parameters that are established for them by conditioning and through belief systems and the people around them. And I lived through that and had to then also break a lot of those barriers by myself to be able to do what I'm doing now. What's really missing and what's always been missing for me, and I remember hearing about this, I think it was Elizabeth Gilbert who wrote about this a few years ago, about how in a patriarchal society, and I don't mean like, burn the patriarchal society, but I mean like in a patrilineal society where power usually passes from man to man to man over hundreds of years of history, thousands of years of history. Men have this hero's journey to be able to point to. Men have these aspirational figures that they have had throughout time, whether that was Greek gods all the way through kings and monarchy, all the way through presidents today and world leaders and Fortune 100 CEOs. There's always somebody's journey to point to say, I'm going to be like that. I can see myself in that journey and I'm going to be like that. And even today, I think women are really missing their heroine journey. They are really missing being able to see themselves as the CEO, as the successful entrepreneur, and being able to point to someone that looks enough like them, seems enough like them to make that feel like they can identify with it. I know I was missing that, and I'm sometimes still missing that. And the only thing I can figure out to solve the problem is to be so much more vocal about our stories, is to tell our stories, like to tell my humble beginning story where no one would have suspected any of this and be real about it so that somebody else can say, if she can do it, maybe there's a chance for me.
Think about it all the time of how do we fix it? And I feel an obligation to fix it
Yeah.
because I think so. I'm 44, and early in my career, I was like the pantsuit generation of like, in order to be a successful woman, I need to follow what are the men doing,
Yes.
and kind of grew up in that and reported into men. And I have a lot of work tendencies that are more masculine than they are feminine. Now, as I'm at a point in my career, I can look to Sarah Blakely, I could look to Allie Webb, and I can see all of these female founders who are now out of their organizations. And I think the piece that I feel obligated to fill is like, who are the women who are in the trenches still and
Yeah.
building still and growing still, and what are they doing, and what do they look like, how do they show up, how do they talk, what are the things that they do. And I don't have a solve. I don't have a daughter, but if I did, I think I would feel even more called to be vocal and to share, and share without answers necessarily. It's just sharing
Yeah.
progress. It's just sharing,
That's,
here's where I am today, here are the things that
here's what I'm
I'm
trying. Um,
yeah.
here's what didn't work here, because that feedback wasn't available, right? It's this peer-to-peer feedback that quite frankly has only become available as I've gotten to the very top level. Everything underneath was a vacuum of feedback, of sounding board, of anybody else who looked like me, who we could say like, did this work for you? What was going on? And you know how women are. Let's say, how women have been painted to be. I am committed to and investing in changing the stereotype about how women support each other in the workplace. Because when we are psychologically not put in a place to be pitted against each other for the one seat at the table, then suddenly we don't have to compete. But that's all about making sure that no, we're not competing for the one seat available for the one woman at the table. That's not the world that we're trying to live in anymore. It's a nuanced topic. I think we're trying to be, let's say I'm trying to be what I didn't have. I can't say that I have ever had I have had some mentorship. I've definitely had people who were willing to see something in me, even from a young age. Like that was as early as college professor in undergrad who saw something in me from an intelligence perspective, saw potential, encouraged me to take the hard classes, encouraged me to do the independent studies, encouraged me to travel. I'd never been anywhere, didn't know anything about travel, but just reflected back to me what they saw in me. And someone asked me the other day, like, what do you think the most important piece of mentorship, or how do you coach people? And I'm like, well, coaching is too much about the individual, but there's no one hard set best practice to say this is how you coach. But when it comes to investing in other people, the thing that is the continual and repeated theme for me is being a mirror for that person's potential, because that might be especially for women, especially for minorities, especially for people who don't see others that look like themselves in the leadership space, you might be the only thing reflecting their potential back to them. And in my opinion, it is incredible the impact that one mirror can have that says, this is what I see in you. This is what I see you doing. I am observing this. This is evidence-based. It's not just because all women are great and everybody should do this. But man, that takes hold. And I've watched it over and over again. I've gotten to experience it, and I've watched it over and over again as I said, you know what? I'm not backing down from what I see. And I'm going to keep telling you what I see until you start to believe it over time. And it's transformational.
Of the mentors that you've had in your life, is there someone specific that you would shout out, and like, are they mainly male? Are they mainly female? Like, have you seen any kind of like theme in that regard?
I would say the one that always comes to mind first was I went to work full time at 16, right after I got my GED, to start saving for college. I knew there was one way to go, and it was going to be me figuring out how to do it on my own. And I went to work for an eye doctor in an incredibly small town in Arkansas, 1,200 people in this town. But this is a woman who definitely stood out, spoke another language, was a female doctor, was running a business with her family. There were not many people like her 30 years ago, 25 years ago in a small town in Arkansas. She reflected my potential back to me for the first time as a very young human. She had expectations of me that I thought were unreasonable at the time, and I rose to meet them every time. She told me something that I'll never forget. She said, Brynn, whatever you do, whatever you pursue, be a lifelong learner, like never stop learning. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know what it meant to develop myself as an individual. I didn't know any of those things, but I just look back at, she held me to account. She saw a potential, and I was running their front office for them at 16 years old. And they let me go. And of course, it was just another of those times where I'm like, yep, I'll figure it out. I'll take this responsibility. Don't know what you don't know. But I would say that was the earliest time. That was the first time that I would say somebody really spoke to my potential. They spoke to who they saw that I could be. And not just where I was, not just, who I was or how I showed up in that moment. And I rose to meet the expectation, which I think people do, right? When you don't expect much, people will meet your expectations. And when you do expect a lot and speak to that potential, people will also rise to your expectations.
And I think it's great that you are a mentor to others now, and you're paying it forward. In the conversations you have with people, are you seeing themes across some of the issues that the people that you mentor are facing, either gender themes or generational themes with Gen X and Gen Alpha coming up? Like what are some of
Yeah.
the concerns that kind of are hitting your conversations?
Yeah, I would say from a recurring perspective, and I coach a lot of mid-career women, both internally and now growing externally, and I love it. Nothing gets me more excited than being able to like speak truth to someone who's just like a rocket ship waiting to take off. Like it is a special, special privilege to get to experience. The common themes I see are recurring and prevalent imposter syndrome. Of course, right? This is not new information. It's not even almost relevant to talk about at this point. But I will tell you that my attitudes towards imposter syndrome have really changed in the last 2 years or so. I used to really feel a sense of insecurity about it. Now I want to push to that place till I feel like I don't belong at the table. And then I'm going to, in 6 months, belong at that table. And then I'm going to push to that next place and that next place. Now I feel like if I'm not constantly hitting that upper limit of what I feel like I'm able to do, I'm not growing. So now I use it as a growth indicator as opposed to like an obstacle to opportunity. And I think that's an interesting change in perspective. And so really trying to lead others through that change in perspective. You feel like an imposter? Great. Let's work with that. Let's absolve that issue, because then I can't wait to see the next time, because it's going to be a bigger room and a bigger challenge where you feel like an imposter. I love that. And I think the other thing that I see continually is just the amount of pressure that women put on themselves to perform in all areas as wives, mothers, caretakers, executives. We put a lot of pressure on ourselves to be perfect. There's no doubt. And that comes with a lot of insecurity and like, do we deserve to be here? Kind of finally laying some of those things to rest. But I'm consistently fascinated by just the strength of the sheer grit and strength of women from mid-career and above to challenge the status quo and to do something different and to balance 12 spinning plates at a time, because there's not a woman that you can point to in any mid-career leadership level or above who is not spinning 15 plates, whether that's home, whether that's at work, whether that's personal, whatever that is. And that honestly looks very different for women than it does for men. It doesn't matter how PC we want to make that conversation. For the foreseeable future, that continues to look different for women than it does for men. And so it's a recurring theme in figuring out how to deal with some of those things and also absolve ourselves of some of the perfectionistic expectations that everything's going to be perfectly balanced all the time and all of these buckets are going to be equally filled at all times. They won't.
I love the fact that you're focusing mid-career, because I do think when I
Yeah.
hit C-level, you're not that you're there, because you're always going to continue to grow and want to get better and want to connect with better people. But the connections are easier because you have that title to
That's right.
lean on, and people inherently want to connect with you. And I do think maybe this is generational, but women supporting women in mid-career, you made the comment earlier that it's territorial or it's
Yeah.
combative. And I have experienced that even recently. I don't like asking for help, and I've really started to try to just force myself to do it, to lean into get better at asking for help
Yes.
and make connections that can unlock things that you're fighting through.
Yeah.
And in reaching out to women for help within the past 12 months, I have been told, like, no, go listen to my podcast. I have been told, no, but buy this course. And I never get that kind of answer when I ask for help from men. And it's so alarming that there is still that competitiveness, or there's still that like unwillingness to open your calendar, open your even 15 minutes of time to like
Yeah.
pull the next person up. And that's one thing I'm just super passionate about. And I'm trying to create structures for pulling the next person up that can be done at scale. So like doing it
Yes.
via the podcast, via sharing aggressively online. But I love that you're taking a one-on-one kind of approach and
Yeah.
providing that hand to bring the next person through. It's a matter of hearing one thing that unlocks a reframing of imposter syndrome. Okay,
That's
then
right.
all of a sudden that impacts the rest of their career, instead of, oh, I'm going to fight and try to not feel like an imposter. I'm going to, but you've given them, no, it's there, do it anyway, reframe and keep going.
That's right.
And you're not just impacting their month, but you've just given them an unlock that is going to stay with them over the next year and year and year. I mean, it's something that will carry them through the upcoming years of their career.
Yeah. I mean, this is a subject we could riff, and I would love to do that. A whole other podcast on is like mid-career impact for women, because I'm doing my doctorate right now, another plate in the air because I'm a little sick, and heavily looking into this space of leadership resilience. Regardless of how you study leadership resilience, you're getting pointed towards mid-career women because that's where we're seeing the dropout rate.
Mm.
And when I think of where can the most impact be made, where can the most life-changing impact be made, it is mid-career women, because there's a vacuum post-COVID of women who were on the rise, who left the workforce, right? There's this really pivotal point that comes probably a few years after women have kids, that they're either going to flatline in career development, they're leaving the workforce, or they're going to take off. Past that point, if you stagnate out or you stale out because either you've had kids and you don't feel like you have options, you don't feel like you can continue to climb like you did, there's a whole list of reasons that we could go into. But I love diving into that space because whether that's a choice to do something more autonomously or to, rise through that kind of mid-level shift in the future, while we say we're making progress in C-suite today, if the pipeline's empty, that's temporary. And we know the pipeline was seriously damaged as a result of COVID. And so for me, it's about kind of making that individual. I connect better on an individual basis anyway. I am no master networker. My soul kind of leaks out of my body when somebody mentions the word networking to me, but I'm trying. I'm doing my best, but trying to do that in a real and intentional way. But I'm with you. Women we don't ask for help. We don't create actionable networks the way that men do. I can tell you it's been a really recent shift, even for me, that I have gone from, I have always been a resource. I have always been the human who will help you, do for you, sometimes way too much, go in and save you, all the things. It has only been very recently that I have begun to feel resourced, that I have begun to feel like I've got a question and 2 or 3 people come to mind that I could call as a sounding board. I'm talking the last 18, 24 months. And I don't have kids. I never went through the kind of that isolating process of, cool, work is great, but there is zero opportunity to socialize outside because we're going to soccer and then we're going to ballet and then we're going to, it's so isolating. And then when we do come out of isolation, we're kind of met with some barriers, especially in the mid-level space, that aren't so inviting. So I keep talking about the term like taking the ick out of the ask. I am really interested in this space of forming connections where I can call you up and say, I need this. And when you think of me, you can say, I can commit her and then call her later and tell her what I need. And she's going to do it.
Yeah.
And enthusiastically, right? I want to be that person who offers myself first, that says, whatever comes to your mind that I can advocate, support, be a platform for you, assume the answer is yes, and I will show up. Because I'm like, I want that kind of resource for myself. And the best way to make that happen is to be that for somebody else, in my opinion.
I love that idea of taking the ick out of the ask. One of the ways that I've tried to reframe that for people and just getting better at asking for help is when you ask for help, you're not only involving the person in your journey and kind of making them a co-pilot along the way, but you're also honoring them and their experience in saying, hey, Brynn, I know you've done a ton in this space. Can you give me a cheat code for XYZ that I'm working through? So reframing it from a standpoint of, you're kind of flattering the person you're asking by
Mhm.
reaching out and asking for help. And 9 times out of 10, people will respond and will try to be helpful. That
Yeah.
being said, is there anything you're working on at the moment that you need help with?
I have a little passion project that has been in development for some time now, kind of a little platform where I experiment and things like that. It's called Alchemy Leadership Lab. It is also a space that really kind of serves my doctoral research, as well as I'm looking at leadership resilience and growth, and leadership resilience through everything from cold plunge and sauna to spiritual and community work to breath work and meditation and fasting, all of those types of things, right? I really believe we need a more tactical toolkit to make our lives as leaders and executives and high output individuals better on a day-to-day basis, like improving quality of life and quantity of life at the same time. So yeah, I would say, be on the lookout, jump on the website, sign up to receive updates. And I'd love to share more as more becomes available. There's going to be some exciting things, especially for mid-career women coming up over the next few months or so, where it's just a passion to give back in that space and say, like, listen, here's the school of hard knocks, and let's see what we can learn from each other. And also just, building up that actionable network of people who are really willing to come together, especially women, and make the ask. I need the recommendation. I need the reference. I need the review. I need the sounding board. Those things move the needle. And I think we can just be a little shy when it comes to making those asks.
Yeah, I think we feel like it's a sign of weakness, and asking for
Yeah.
help is more a sign of strength. It's a sign that you're building, it's a sign that you're on the move, and it's a sign that you understand your own skill set and knowledge base, and you understand what a cheat code it can be to tap into someone who has been in the space for years, as opposed to,
Yeah.
trying to plow through and figure it out yourself. Just ask, and it can save so much time and energy and effort. As you are thinking back on your career, on your life, are there moments, or is there a moment that you can reflect on as a comeback season? Maybe a point where you were on a low and you really had to dig in and self-reflect and maybe reposition and reconnect to
Mhm.
your why, in order to kind of dig out.
Yeah, boy, I think my life and trajectory is a continual iteration of transformation, right? I'm a Scorpio. I really identify with this whole Phoenix mentality. And thank God, there's been a lot in my personal life and also in my professional life that has really required me to be able to transmute pain, trauma, obstacle, difficulty into something better and different. That's why alchemy as a concept is so important to me, right? The idea that you can take kind of base level elements and transmute them and transform them into something better and something for your good, kind of take what was meant for harm and make it into good. So I would say two major things stick out to me, one personally, one professionally, which is, my father passed away very suddenly about 8 years ago, I was right in the middle of my MBA program. I was right in the middle of kind of a transition between kind of marketing director, executive director of sales, like my first major career transition. And that really set in motion a series of a few quite traumatic events that went on in my family that lasted for a few years. And I was really at the center of that storm. Being able to transform a lot of that trauma and things that happened during that time into now what has become a platform for good and a platform for positive growth and healing and transformation is a huge piece of who I am today. And then on the professional side, honestly, I have battled through the deepest, darkest burnout you can imagine over multiple points in my career development, and learning new habits, which is part of this leadership resilience thing to me, learning new habits that avoid kind of that plunge into burnout it's not a vacation that gets you over that. It's not post COVID, a lot of us were in this space. We had been at this high level, high stress, high anxiety output for sometimes 2-3 years at a time, with no real mental break, no idea what's happening next. And that took a toll. And it took a toll on a lot of us. And so, really kind of going back to the drawing board to say, mindfulness isn't enough. And that vacation that I love to take, everybody knows I love adventure travel. That wasn't enough either to make me come back to my why. Like, how do I protect the asset? How do I feed myself on a daily basis, whether that's spiritually, physically, emotionally, and mentally, to know that I'm not just battling back from burnout, but that I'm raising my baseline of existence and quality of life as a leader every day. And that's really changed my perspective on how I operate. And also then trying to feed that to the people that I work with as well, to say, like, listen, this is not about you working 12 hours a day. It's not sustainable. We need you in peak performance mode, which means you got to sleep 8 hours and you need to go do something for yourself and take a walk. And that needs to be a daily habit, not I took a walk today and it was the first time in 2 weeks. That's got to be like daily feeding the system. Yeah, those 2 periods I really had to come back. In my personal life, who am I at the core? When my entire foundation has been kind of ripped down, who am I still? And that made me realize, like, I am a human who does transmute things and who can take chaos and turn it into a whole new and different and positive thing. And on the professional side, that challenged my values through burnout as well. Like, who am I at the core of my being? And honestly, what made me keep coming back during those days is my team. Had nothing to do with the product, had nothing to do with the industry, had nothing to do with, sales numbers. It was my team. To say that I have this incredibly privileged position to be able to invest in and have the trust of the people around me, and they rely on me and I rely on them, and I've gotten to see them explode into growth. I mean, at the end of the day, that is my why. As simple as that.
I love that, and I'm a big believer in the need for daily recovery as opposed to periodic bursts of vacation or,
Yeah.
celebration. It really has to be something that's part of your routine. It's baked into your day to day. I'm going to wrap things up by giving you a shout out because as strong as my merch game is, your merch game is phenomenal. And I don't know if that's from your marketing background or from your team, but I'm going to go on the record and say that you have the best merch in the business right now.
I am so excited about this because there might be 2 or 3 much cooler people in my marketing department who will hear this and get excited about that as well. But I agree with you. I think our merch and swag is the best that's out there. And I try to leave that to the people who are far more in touch with the tips and trends than I am. I walk in my New Balance and I'm like, am I cool? And then I get a nod or like, no. But yeah, I'm with you. We've got some of the coolest swag out there. We've got new stuff coming. Our belt bags are like the hottest, most coveted giveaway out there in the industry. So yeah, we love it. It's fun to see what's going to be, next and interesting.
If you've seen me recently, you've seen me rocking the JK Products belt bag. Like that is part of my daily, uniform at this point. So
Yeah.
if you have made it to this point in the episode and you're on YouTube and you like and you comment on this episode, you're going to be entered to win not just some Sizzle Society merch, but you're also going to be entered to win some JK Products and Services merch. So like, comment, and on the following Monday, we'll be picking 2 winners. So
Yeah.
get in this game. It's definitely a bribe to get more engagement on my podcast, but that is me asking for help. I not only ask for help, but then I reward when you do actually help.
Yes.
So please help me out, engage on the podcast, and then we'll throw some giveaways into the mix at you guys. But Brynn, thank you so much for being here today, for sharing your story. I think we could do another 3 episodes down the road. I enjoy talking to you so much. And I'm just going to close out with a quote that I think was in the Mattel spot that you shared, or the Barbie spot that you shared earlier. We need to see brilliant women being brilliant and see how they got to where they are. Thank you for showing up and sharing how you got to where you are. And if you guys are not connected to Brynn, connect with Brynn, follow her journey, because she is someone who's out there doing all of the things.
Thank you so much, Jessica. Love talking with you. I love supporting your podcast. And I promise you, we will make these giveaway VIP swag experiences worth it. So you will want to sign up and comment. I promise you.
All right. You heard it here, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Society Pod.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Society Pod.